away.
Hey, one update in 15 years isn't bad, huh?
Yeah, they got a lot of catch up to do. We'll see.
Okay, we got confirmation back from YouTube. It looks like we're live.
Who's editing today?
Sky. Oh no, wait a second. Sky was going to, but then he bounced it down to Stuart. So Stuart. Stuart.
Was there a rock paper scissors?
There was.
There was.
I won, and I handed it over to Stuart since I did it yesterday, so he can have the practice.
Okay.
Sky was a true gentleman about the whole thing.
There we go. There we go. All right.
He wants the wind at his back for the goalposts.
Okay, Stuart, you have it. Hey, everybody.
Hubbub.
I'm just gonna say hi. You guys are gonna have general conversation. I'm counting on you. I'm counting on the participants to ask great questions and move the conversation down the path. And I'm counting on the panelists to have a great conversation about whatever the attendees put up there. So I'm in production, and I can't wait to get back to hanging out with all of you a couple hours a day, which will start Friday.
Cool.
So anyway, just a reminder that Dolby Summit's on Thursday. We're going to talk a lot in November and December about vision and Atmos. So you should really consider the 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. I sent the link out with the announcement this morning as kind of a precursor to a lot of stuff we're going to talk about. It's an exciting time to talk about HDR, and so we're going to be talking a lot about it, HDR and surround. So anyway, thanks everybody. I'm going back into production, and I'll talk to you soon.
And you're tossing in the hosting off to Stuart.
Stuart's got it.
Stuart
has the con. All right, bye guys.
Thank you, Alex.
Cheers. See you later.
Okay.
Yep, and I've just made you the co-host there, Bill, so you should pop up on your screen as well.
I did. Thank you very much.
But we're still focusing on audio today then, right?
Yeah, we're going to do that. If for those of you who are putting questions in the Mukana interface, if you put audio in capital letters and a colon after that, I will try to hold that off until our second hour when we have a focus on audio, and I'll try to pre-read the questions as they come in and maybe move some others over there so that we don't confuse anybody who in the old system was used to coming for the second hour for the focus discussion after the first hour of general discussion had finished up. There may be some new people here, so let me just go through the general rules. You're at office hours. You found us. Congratulations, and thank you for attending. As you probably know, if you're looking at the panel, you're seeing all these people who are panelists and you wonder how they got there. It's very easy. All you have to do is come in when we open the doors sometime between 6 and maybe 6:30 Pacific Standard Time and raise your Zoom hand. And once you do that, you're allowed into the panel. We ask that you have good audio and good video. Those are really the only criteria for that. But once you pop in, you can be a panelist at will. There's no more qualification than that. It helps if you know something about some area of the production arts, because our job all day long here during the course of this and 24/7 on Mukana is to try to help people handle the technical questions that are attending this big shift into the Zoom and online world. So it's kind of a global conversation too. If you look in the panel and look at where people come from, there are literally people in this panel from all over the world, which is one of the coolest things about office hours. We have people from just about every corner, and that's why everybody is welcome. We're hoping that wherever you are, it's not 4 o'clock in the morning, but other than that time zone thing, we can't do anything about. It's an open forum. So this is really kind of tech education for the work from home era, informally. So after you do that hand raise at 6:40 every morning, the Discord link is passed out. We were talking about that a little earlier, but for those of you in the YouTube audience and everybody else who got here a little late, that Discord link is the portal to that chat that happens 24/7, 365 on these topics that we talk about here on office hours. And that lasts from then until the show starts. When the show starts, the Discord link is killed for that day and comes back the next morning. So if you miss it on one day, you're going to have to come back the next day to do it again. Then at 6:40 or so, the mic checks start. We do have, we like to put out a show that looks good and sounds good, and we've worked really hard at that. And if you're around for mic checks, everybody goes through and make sure their levels are correct so that you don't have that thing you often see on Zooms now where one person's coming in really quietly and somebody else is blowing you out. Sky, did you have a question in the middle of this?
I would love to hear Alex Goldner describe what Discord is, because is it a verb or a noun or what is it?
Alex, do you want to handle that question?
Well, I suppose wouldn't we say there is some discord amongst the people? So you would say it's a noun, I suppose, because it is a thing, isn't it? A thing, a kind of, yeah.
Discord kind of is a forum, and I think it started for gamers. And gamers
yes,
really...
well, you need to define what it is, because we're using it as we know what we're talking about. For those that don't know what Discord is, it is a...
Yeah, a huge chat system developed originally for gamers.
But I want to hear Alex's accent. Sorry.
Okay.
So I only started using Discord after getting this Discord link from office hours, and I would say that it is a slightly smoother, slightly different version of Slack. And what is Slack? I suppose you could say is threaded conversations with various subjects. So the idea is that you can set up a subject and you can comment on it, and you can see any updates to those
You are seeing now the interface for our Office Hours Discord. You can see that there's all sorts of discussions happening in the center column. On the left, there are various forums, and as you scroll the pane on the left, you will be able to see all sorts of things, and click on one of those and you get an interface like he's scrolling through right now that shows everybody's chat happening. So you can ask questions, you can get answers, you can just discuss things as you would in any forum. So that's
in practice.
Go ahead.
In practice, I don't. In the case of Discord, I'm not quite sure how to turn what the information we have in it into more of a repository of information as opposed to a series of chats and links. I don't know if there's a way of kind of organizing the information so that people don't necessarily would actually want to turn to Discord to find the answer to the question first before asking us. But we're actually quite happy to answer the same question again, because who knows how our thinking has changed and how the makeup of the people on the panel have changed. So
yeah, that's one of the things about this live discussion, I think, is that you will find that happens. For example, one of the famous things that has happened here in Alex's office hours, we found an inexpensive, crazy inexpensive $9 headset mic that turned out to be really good. And so we talked about it, and people who were trying to get on Zoom and didn't want to spend a lot of money bought them out. And then we had to move to a different one. So while we were recommending that for a while, as soon as that became impossible to get a hold of, somebody in the group found another alternative mic, and we switched everybody to that, which is kind of demonstrative of the fact that the conversation evolves based on conditions and then based on what people are learning as the software and hardware we're talking about evolves. So I think getting in there, yeah, go ahead, Sky. Whoops, you're muted.
I am no longer muted. Sorry about that. So okay. Alex, so I originally was scraping the things I wanted onto a Google Doc, but then Chris reached out, and then we're in honoring of Mike Andrews. We're scraping all of the chat and putting them into chat-links every day. So we're doing both a text document, but then I will also scrape all of that and put it in individually. And so if you ever want to look in the archive, do a search of a topic. So that's why putting your comments are critical for search meta information over on the archive of Discord. Thank you.
That's okay. That was a good explanation of how that works. So we're almost at the point where we need to just open the general Q&A for the show. But basically, the one thing you should know is that it's critically important for you as attendees, not panelists, although the panelists can now participate in it too, to vote up and down the questions you're seeing in the Mukana chat list. That's where we focus. Things that get the most votes are where we start, and we take the most time to chat about. And for this morning, the thing that has floated to the top of the list is Alex Goldner's question. Thusly, Apple say they will be releasing their Apple Silicon Macs by the end of the year. Which Macs do you think we'll see first? So anybody in the panel have any suggestions on that? I've got a few thoughts, but Jason, go ahead. You start.
My guess is because they want to make the most compelling, long battery life, crazy performance argument that they can, I'm going to say it's probably the MacBook Nothing. That's my guess.
So the regular MacBook, probably the smallest, maybe the 13 or 12 inch. We don't know what's going to come out and what its form factor is going to look like. Let's get a few more answers. Courtney, and then Jeffrey Powers, and then Victor. Go ahead, Courtney.
I think probably the MacBook Air, because for the same reasons, it's going to be the smallest, lightest. and something you don't expect the most heavy workload on, because I think the first they're not going to put it into the desktop machines probably till last, since there's a large amount of non-Apple software that may become hosed once they go to that processor, and will take a while for developers to convert over. So I think where they can do the least damage is in the MacBook Air area.
Okay, so Jeffrey?
So right now there is the developer silicon, which is in a Mac Mini. And so that would be my guess as to be the first device that comes out with the silicon. As for the Air, I'm still going to say it. I know some of you will dispute me on this, but I have a feeling that the Air will disappear and they'll push everybody towards a Mac or towards the iPad. The iPad will become the Air, and then eventually the MacBook Pro will still have the Mac OS, but it just doesn't make sense to have such a lightweight computer not become part of the iPad family.
Okay, Victor and then Stuart. Victor, go ahead.
I'm going to go with double. I think they'll do it on the MacBook Nothing and the Mini.
Okay, there you go. Actually, I forgot Alex was in the queue. So Alex next and then Stuart. Go ahead, Alex Skolner.
I think it's possible that they, as well as a low-end MacBook, whichever one it is, that's going to help the public understand what Apple Silicon's about. But I think for PC people and Mac people, I think they may go for the iMac Pro, because it hasn't been updated recently, and there's space for it to expand up. Because even if it's almost as powerful as the Mac Pro, the fact that it isn't expandable and probably won't allow for third-party GPUs will just demonstrate the power of Apple Silicon. But it's for a relatively small audience, but it'll actually get the people who care about PCs in general and the battle between Intel and AMD and Apple, get them all interested in terms of the culture, in terms of the PC/Mac/tech culture. So they'll demonstrate maybe also with the iMac Pro, look how powerful this is, even including our own GPU technology, because that's the bit I'm kind of interested in seeing how powerful they are. So maybe also the iMac Pro, because it hasn't been updated recently.
Interesting. Stuart?
I kind of agree with what Jeffrey was saying about a MacBook Air, but I think there would be a position sort of halfway between the MacBook Air and the MacBook itself, where they could slide in a Pro model to try and encourage people to step up from phone to tablet to Pro on their own silicon before moving further up to a proper laptop. I do question whether an iMac Pro or anything would get it anytime soon, simply because of the way they're going to have to shift Final Cut and artist-based uses up to higher spec machines that are currently supported by that software.
It's going to be interesting. Apple Silicon, my thought originally when I heard about the fact that it was coming, when Apple officially announced it, my thought was that they were going to do what they've tended to do, which is start modestly and then iterate and improve as things get more stable. So I thought it was going to come out on maybe a low-end MacBook Pro or MacBook, probably the MacBook first, and then they would move it. But I'm a little interested. The Creative Summit is coming up, I think, in November. And they have used that in the past for big announcements. They've released new versions of Final Cut there. And we have heard in these official things that was one of the first things, that Apple was going to take their software and migrate it onto the code for Apple Silicon early. So if that turns out to be true, it wouldn't surprise me if we at least learn something about maybe machines that they were heading towards there. Victor, and then Sky, and then Stuart. Go ahead, Victor.
A bit related, likely the same time that they announce these new Macs, there's going to be a Big Sur release. Please, please, if you're an audio professional, video professional, don't do it. Just wait, because many of our devices that we love will not be supported for a while.
There you go. Sky, next.
Well, as you're learning how to navigate and hold on to the rudder, Mr. Bill, I do notice that we have quite a few questions now. So I don't know how to navigate. How long per topic, per quota, per time, per bill?
Yeah, thank you. I'll keep my eyes on that. The promise of the show, and I think Alex is exactly right. The things that are most important, we talk the most about. So if we have to go into our speed round later, we will do so. But we do have some really interesting things here. Stuart, real quick, let's get you taken care of, and then we'll move on to
one
question
thing
two.
not to forget is the possibility of OS X going away. I mean, if Apple moved to their own ARM-based processor, wouldn't the iOS be the better operating system for that, because it's already a mature operating system?
Somebody with way more hardware knowledge than me would have to opine on whether the ARM-based chips that run the iOS devices at this point have the oomph to do what the big silicon does. I don't know the answer to that. Jeffrey, do you have any insights on that?
I think, well, whatever happens, it's going to be a 5-year plan. 2 years to introduce, 3 years to decommission. So I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be very resistant at first. There's going to, music and film, they're not going to want to switch over their Final Cut Pro to an iOS or iPad OS system until they know that it is going to fulfill their need. And then, of course, you'll have to be able to have a system that has multiple cores, a lot more than what they have right now for the iPad Air, for the MacBook Pro, or anything like. I'm sorry, the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro, or anything like that. So I have a feel we're going to see it. This is not going to be an overnight sensation, and I don't think that it's just going to be developer kits till next year. So I at that point, I think there'll be another OS update before anybody sees a silicon.
I have a suspicion it's going to depends on how much bump there is. If Apple Silicon, runs 10 or 15% better, that's wonderful. And whenever they've given me that much, I can notice it. But if it comes out that it's 30 or 40 or 50% faster, and I'm just blue sky on this because I have no idea, that would push, I think, people to, if suddenly your 12-inch MacBook runs as fast as my MacBook Pro 16-inch, I would notice that. Jason, real quick.
It's difficult to understate what a 5-nanometer process can do for the speed and overall efficiency of a processor. Calling what they have an ARM-based processor kind of negates the fact that they're designing every single turn in this silicon. I think it's definitely going to be impressive, and how impressive? Well, every year a little bit more.
Yeah, there you go. That's interesting. Sky, real quick, and then Courtney, real quick, and then let's.
Yes, I'm going to throw in an opinion as I'm listening to the conversation. Apple is going to do what's best for Apple. That's its tradition. It's got 750 billion in reservoir. They can do whatever they want. They traditionally have just moved on. They went from OS 9. We all complained, but we jumped on. They threw away the 3-inch floppy, and they threw away the CD. So my vote is mobile, and all the heavy lifting is going to be somewhere in a cloud-based situation, because that's where the world is going. And what we'll be having is some kind of window device into their big machinery. That's my prediction.
Pray the fiber hits everybody's home then.
5G is the answer.
Maybe so. Courtney, real quick, and then let's get to...
the last time they changed architecture, I think, was to be more compatible with the rest of the world. Now they're moving back the opposite direction, and remember, this is going to alienate all those people out there, those professionals out there working in an office environment who like their Mac but need to run 2 or 3 Windows applications for their corporate, and they're running it virtually in a window. That's going to go away, at least for a while. So the corporate world that are using Macs, I don't think are going to move very quickly to a desktop solution on ARM.
Okay. Well, you have a variety of opinions from across the industry, which is exactly what this is cool for. We're going to move on to the next piece of this puzzle, which is Guy in Seattle asking my favorite question in the morning. Can we hear about Vipul's project? And Vipul and
Bijou.
Oh, Bijou's over there. He's hidden on the right side of my screen, almost covered up. So Vipul and Bijou are here. Can you give us a report on how everything went for you guys?
Let me first just give you a brief history of this project, because this is very interesting. Some of you may be knowing that we are building a huge stone temple and a complex in New Jersey. The stone from Italy and Bulgaria, first big boulders, are shipped to India. They are cut into small pieces and then carved. Individual pieces are carved and then sent to America and assembled like a jigsaw puzzle. So the final temple is going to be looking something like this. And we finally had the last stone of this temple, the most pinnacle temple, built here, which is in the center of the screen here, if you can see. That stone got carved just maybe 10 days back. And before sending it to America, we wanted it to be sanctified by our guru. So our guru, as Baiju earlier mentioned, he's currently in a very small village, very remote village with a population of less than 7,000 people. And there are 3,000 plus families in America who wanted to participate in this ceremony as well. So we had 3 locations, 2 in India. One is called Nagpur, where our guru was. Second, in city where we are, there was an anchor. And the third place is actually in Robbinsville and entire America, where there are 3,000 people participating in this ceremony. So we wanted to have kind of a live broadcast between all these 3 places. I'll pass the baton to Baiju on the technical terms. I can pitch in whenever needed, but yeah, he worked very hard on this project. So we wanted to connect all these places in such a way that there is a minimum latency, because an anchor would be asking to perform certain ceremony, certain rituals on the stone there. And the ceremony was more like something like this. Our guru performed the ceremony there. And that's the actual stone, which is going to be in America in next 1 month, and it is going to be on the pinnacle ultimately. That is the highest piece of stone. So the ceremony is very involved, where a lot of rituals are going, and everything needed to be very tightly coordinated. The moment priest says something to do, that needs to be happened at Nagpur, at our guru's place, as well as to those 3,000 families participating in the ceremony. So that was a big challenge for us to come up with the project and rightly deliver. And by God's grace, everything delivered perfectly fine. Baiju,
Wow.
if you want to tell something about that.
Baiju?
Yeah, it was a bit of a challenge, as Vipul mentioned, that the challenge was the latency, because we had the main anchor in Ahmedabad, our guru was in Nagpur, and the main MCR and the main events, all the people attending were in the US. So we had multiple time zones to deal with. We had latencies to deal with as well. So we tested a lot of different systems, including SRT, Media Looks, a lot of different things. But we ended up going to Alex's staple, Zoom, because specifically for the latency. And the other thing was the ease of use, because everybody is used to using Zoom right now. So the idea was that wherever we have volunteers or people coming in, they all know how to use it. It's easier for them to troubleshoot. And Zoom has been pretty stable. So we did a lot of testing. We managed to get HD on it, fortunately, a little before Jason, but not that much ahead. But we got that. We tested it. We did a lot of testing. It was complex. Like we set up a full MCR basically in Robbinsville at the temple. So we were sending all the feeds there. They were sending us return feeds. They were sending us instructions. They were coordinating. And they were mixing the final product for streaming live to all the 3,000 families who are watching in the US, who are performing the ceremonies, and also people all around the world who are also watching and participating. So we had people in India, people in Africa, people in the UK, basically on almost every continent except Antarctica, who were participating remotely. So it was an interesting event.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And I'm never going to be impressed by any gigantic Lego construction I see again. That is an astonishing level of detail and remote coordination to get something that precise built in pieces and assembled somewhere else. So I'm just in awe of the detail. Stuart, you want to pop in?
I'm just curious as to what sort of stone the carving was done out of, what sort of tools they were using, whether it's done by hand or machinery, and if there's any 3D renderings of the inside of the building that we can share.
Yes,
yeah, go ahead.
Stone. Sorry.
No. Please.
There are 2 varieties of the stone we are using. For external, we need to have the stone which is comfortable with the harsh winter of New Jersey. So we have selected Bulgarian limestone for exterior. So all the renderings you saw from outside, they are all Bulgarian limestone. and inside of the monument is going to be marble, because marble is very good for carving. And you rightly said, I mean, we are still using those traditional ways of hand chisel, hammer and a chisel to carve the stone. I do have some renderings, but they are a little old and I don't have right now on this laptop. But maybe later sometimes whenever we discuss about this project, we can talk about. But at this point of time, almost like 1,000 volunteers are carving the piece of stones here in India and then shipped, and then almost like 300 volunteers there, they are assembling entire temple there.
Was there any difficulty in finding the stonemasons and the craftsmen to do that kind of carving on that scale? I mean, that's a tremendously large crew.
Very interesting question. This is little non-technical, but let me take a liberty of answering this. In 2005, we built our temple in New Delhi, which is currently the largest Hindu temple in the world. It has been done in the similar way. When we started working on that project and earlier project of our temple in Gandhinagar, the stone carving skill was almost extinct. There were hardly maybe 100, 200 families who knew this kind of skills. So what we did, instead of bringing them to our workshop and carve the stone, we sent the stone to their houses, to their families. And then we told them that if you can train your nephew, if you can train your brother, if you can train your family members on this skill, and with that model, we created a community of almost like 7,000 people who are very expert in stone carving now. So entirely new community was created, and the whole art of stone carving, which was almost extinct, we revived it. And now we have almost like 5,000 to 7,000 people who are expert in doing this kind of work.
That is just awesome. Hasmik?
I was wondering if the live stream was recorded and if it's still available on YouTube or anywhere. Was this a Swami Narayan temple or not?
Yes.
Namaste, Vipul Bhai.
Hasmukh Uncle, thank you very much. Yeah, we did live stream it on YouTube as well, but we are working on the it's a 2.5 hours long ceremony, so nobody would have interest to watch that long. So we are coming up with a shorter version, more like a highlights. And once it is available, we will share it on Discord, and here everybody can watch them.
And it is a Swami Narayan temple.
Yes, it is BAPS Swaminarayan Temple in Robbinsville, New Jersey. Yep.
Very cool. Well, that's when we first heard you guys were doing something, we didn't realize, I didn't realize the scale of what you have been involved with. It's incredibly impressive. So, and through this, when you were talking about bringing those stonemasons back into the fold, everybody, I just watched faces light up on the panel. So it was very cool. I think everybody understands not wanting to see those crafts continue to fade away, and it's great that they're coming back. All right. Sky, before we move on, do you have something else?
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, I'm just fascinated that we're using centuries old techniques or technology. I'm just curious, in combination, you're live streaming to the globe with today's technology. It's just this I don't know, history and future just kind of seem to crash in the middle of that sentence. So I guess my question is, what technology was used and is incorporated into this new facility? Because granite's going to be around for centuries, but your cables are probably going to rot in whatever, copper wire you put inside is going to rot. So I'm just curious, A, and B, could you come train my Presbyterians? We need help.
To answer the first question, I know there are a lot of questions, so I'll remain as brief as possible. This is a stone temple. There is no dry walls. So whatever conduits you put in right now is going to be there for 1,000 years. So tomorrow, if technology changes and we need to change the cables, we cannot drill holes, we cannot do anything. So we came up with a way by which we have created the highways for low voltage and high voltage inside the building, coming out at the right locations, that even in future, if we need to have different lights, if we need to have a different technology to be installed there in terms of the monitoring screens or the temperature monitoring or people's flow, visitor management, CCTV cameras, or anything, we have created the highways of conduits inside the temple, inside the stone, in such a way that the building is future proof. Even after 500 years, if we need to lay new cables, we have done it in such a way that it is possible to do even after 500 years. And answering one more thing, even though we are using the ancient technology to build it, we have already started planning on augmented reality for the visitors. So when they come, they will have their phone with our augmented reality app. So wherever there is a carving, if they point their camera, they will be able to find out the details of those carving or those statues on their phone. So we are already using the latest technology. Once the visitor experience needs to be created, whatever technology at that point of time will be available, we'll be using that. So this is our kind of a roadmap for the technology.
Fantastic.
So cool.
Fantastic.
Let me add one more small talk. I'm taking a little more time, but in 1980, 85, 86, when we started actually embracing technology in our organization, we had question in our mind that if people, most of the time, I mean, if you see our auditoriums or if you see our assembly places and all these things, we use a lot of projectors, a lot of heavy sound system and all latest technologies. We have created kind of a water show in Delhi, Akshardham, our temple in Delhi, which is one of the top 10 water shows in the world. So when we were venturing into technology early in 1985, 86, we were puzzled whether we can use the technology which is otherwise used in Las Vegas and those kind of things, where technology is used to excite people in a different direction rather than on a spiritual direction. So we asked a question that, whether we should use this kind of technology to our guru. And our guru said that technology is neutral. It is how you use it. If people are using technology for some different purpose, why we can't use it for spiritual purpose? Go ahead and use the technology as much as you want, as long as it conveys the right meaning, right purpose to everybody. So this is how we have taken technology in our organization.
Absolutely. Courtney, you have a last point before we move on?
Yeah. So I was wondering if the gold spires on top can be used as 5G antennas then.
We are not Verizon or Sprint that we need that kind of antenna there.
Okay, that was a fascinating discussion, and I'm so glad we had a chance to go through and learn something about that. You know, we're always talking about small and large projects. I can't remember the last time I thought about a project on this scale, lasting this many years, and designed to last millennium in the future. So it's very cool. All right, kind of getting back to normaler topics. Dan Huber of Erie, Pennsylvania says, I heard Jason say that he got updated to 1080 in Zoom, but what does he use? What does use HD in the video settings on Zoom change? Does it just change to 720? Who wants to take this back end of Zoom process? I know we've talked about it. Jason's going to be brave and dive into that. Go,
sure.
Jason.
I mean, it's pretty easy. I mean, I can just show it to you. So where you would have the 720, as you can see, I also have this 1080p option. It's that simple.
Okay,
there you go.
First of all, Jason, why don't you tell people what you have for Zoom? Do you have the enterprise version of Zoom, or the Pro, or the regular?
It's actually just it's a one-man account. I don't know. It was a couple $100. Honestly, I don't remember. I bought it right
so
when
you
COVID
have the Pro
started.
account.
Yeah, I think it's the Pro account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's kind of odd, because they've been saying time and time again, and I think I can back me up on this one, is that they would not give 1080 unless you had an enterprise account or better.
A business account with 10 licenses.
Yeah,
so a business account with 10 licenses is what the standard has been. I've heard of some people getting it. No, actually, everybody that I've heard has been 10 licenses. So, Jason, you're saying you don't have 10 licenses?
No, I don't have 10 licenses. So let me be really clear. Please, if you're hearing this, do not contact Zoom and say, you did this, so do it now. Like, The way I did it was very polite, and I told them the truth. It was that simple. Like, I'm using Zoom to sell Zoom. It would behoove you and me for me to not need 10 accounts, because I don't have 10 people working here. That was it.
So basically what got you this upgrade was a silver tongue. You found a good way to explain it to them, that it wasn't just because you wanted it. You had a reasonable business thing that would be mutually beneficial between you and Zoom.
Precisely.
Okay. Stuart, dive in on it.
That explains the how Jason got upgraded part of the question, but Dan actually asks, use HD in video settings of Zoom change. So I think he was actually asking about in the regular Zoom client, what does it alter if we click that checkbox to use HD? As far as I know, it's just upgrades our output to be a maximum of 720p.
That's my understanding of it too, yeah. As far as the application is concerned, I see absolutely no difference.
Okay. Jason, are you actually seeing, did you actually run a stats test to see if you're pushing 1080p? Because I've helped a lot of people get this and nobody has gotten it with a single license. And so are you sure you actually ran a new meeting?
I haven't tried it yet. So
just
I don't
because
know.
just because you see that option in the back end doesn't mean that you actually have it. So there's still
Oh, you think they just shut me up? That'd be funny.
Yeah, yeah. We can run a test right after this, and we can double check. But yeah, that's
So we'll try to get a report tomorrow's Wednesday, so we're still here. Thursday is the day of the big show. So yeah, we'll try that tomorrow morning and see if you report back on that. Jeff, do you want to get in on this?
I just wanted to ask Jason where that setting is. That's in the web client or the web account, and which pane?
It is in, and now I have to look again. Let me get all the way to the top so you can see it. Let's see. Yep, meeting. It's in meeting.
Okay, then. So moving on, Jeff Francis has the next question. Jeff, who is here in the panel, and Jeff says, I want to get an audio video feed from one venue to another on campus. Both rooms are on the same local area network. What are my options? Who are our network gurus and want to help Jeff figure out? Beju, go ahead.
Jeff, the first question that'll probably come up is, does it latency matter to you, or does quality matter? That's probably going to be the first thing. If latency is there, probably, or NDI full is probably the lowest latency you can get. If you want better quality, SRT you probably get better quality with SRT as well for that.
How much latency are you talking about? It's not interactive.
So SRT, you can probably looking at about, if it's on the same LAN, you're probably looking at about half a second to a couple of seconds if you really want to do a really high-res HD speed. NDI full, you're probably looking at a couple of frames.
Yeah, half a second's no problem. We're looking at possibly having an event where there are performers in several different venues. And so each of them has an ATEM switcher and multiple cameras, and it would feed into one place, into another switcher, and then out for streaming.
Then probably using an NDI converter might be a little bit easier, because you could then use something like vMix or a TriCaster or something, or use converters to bring it back into the switcher. Probably give you more flexibility if you want to do multicast. That's the big thing. SRT is nice, but it's really more designed for point to point. So for that, probably NDI is probably a better option, as long as you have a solid network and your network guys let you do multicast or MDNS on it.
John Preto next, and then we'll go to Jeffrey. John?
Well, isn't this a perfect application for Dante, Jeff?
No video over Dante.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, Jeffrey.
So I just want to make sure I understand this, that the goal is to have different performances, not performers in different locations, correct? So you have one group in one room and another group in another room, or all performers in different rooms?
In different groups. So one group would perform, a host would talk, we'd cut to another room with a separate set of performers. So no interaction between the rooms, just switching.
Then I would go with the NDI route. Then of course, I'm assuming, is it from building to building? Is it fiber connection or is it Ethernet connection?
Fiber from building to building.
Yeah, then NDI route might be your best bet.
Guy, did you still want to weigh in on this, or were you?
Yeah, I mean, those little Kilo View E2s, those are pretty cool. I've tested out those with NDI, and they're pretty easy to set up. But Jeff Keithley, I see, is in the chat. He'd probably say, yeah, you're going to need to set up some. It's a little more complicated than that because you got to turn on MDNS and IGMP snooping, so it can have other repercussions repercussions when you start to turn on things in a large network like that. So they might want to carve out a separate VLAN just for your NDI feeds so that that traffic stays in that VLAN. The other option that's super simple is a Zoom room to Zoom room. It's so cool when you can actually just pop open a display and just say, hook this room to this room, and it's so dead simple. So that's another thing to look at. I mean, you can play with it on just 2 old computers and try it out, but in our office, we just go invite Zoom room, and the other conference room appears, and they're connected just like that. And anybody can do it. It's so simple. So
hey,
something
Jeff
to look at. The picture's not going to be nearly as nice, but it'll be pretty good.
Jeff Keithley, since you're watching and not doing this, I'm tracking the number of days that you're here in the attendees, but you're not showing up. You got to at least pop in and say hi to everybody. Jeff's been here since the early days, and we miss him on the panel. Okay, moving along to the next question, James Babbitt of San Diego, who is a frequent questioner, and they're always fun. Can anyone join the Dolby Summit on Thursday morning, and is there a link? And I believe the link to that is in Alex's invite to this day's chat. So go back in your email and look for something from Alex Lindsay and look at the bottom of it and see
right
if
at the bottom.
It's at the bottom. Okay.
Scroll down, you'll see it.
Okay.
I also put it in Makana, so it's also in Makana.
Okay. So Victor has taken that link and put it in Mukana. So those of you who have gone through the Mukana dance and are part of the many hundreds of people who are chatting daily, there's your answer for that. Let me mark a couple of questions here, and we're moving on to Matt Cooley's question from Montreal, Quebec. I just bought a new plain gray backdrop that hangs from a horizontal pole. What's the best way to remove the crazy amount of wrinkles? And if my wife was on this, she would be going steamer, steamer, steamer. Assuming that this is cloth, now it may be vinyl or something like that. There are a lot of different background materials. Has anybody found ways to deal with wrinkles in backgrounds for things that do not simply steam out? Or maybe steam will work with vinyl. I've never tried that. No?
I don't think it'll work with vinyl for sure, but you do need to steam, and usually a simple cotton fabric will do.
Yeah. I would think if you've got one of those vinyl backgrounds, maybe try an iron on very, very, very low heat and test it very carefully on something away from that.
I've never found success with those vinyl things.
Yeah. The melting
proper fabric or proper
very small.
color roller.
Put a towel between the iron.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, maybe a damp towel, and you get a little steam that way, and who knows? Yeah. Stuart?
If Matt's talking about the backgrounds that just hang from a pole that you can pick up off of B&H or off of Banggood or the like, I found by accident that one left hung up for about a month or so with a little bit of weight on the bottom does lose its wrinkles. I've got a green screen that's been set up like that, and it's getting nicer and nicer to key on as it stretches out. But the key is actually make sure they're folded correctly after use, not just tumbled and tossed in a bag. Also set them up a couple of days before, give them time to settle, and use some C46s, which is what we call pegs to the accountants, so they don't kick the item out of the budget, to just lightly pull them tight and put a little bit of weight on the bottom.
We use C47s here. Yeah, that's interesting. So
you can also buy these things, which are Velcro and on a elastic with a little clamp, which you can use at the base of your cotton or background, and then you just increase tension by using the little tensioner here. They cost about £8 for 6 on Amazon.
Okay, Sky.
Do you have a link for that, Kev? That we
yeah,
can
I'll go and
put
get
in
it.
the
I'll
chat?
pull it up on the line.
Awesome.
And an old traveling technique is roll your material rather than fold, and that way you got potential less chance of fold links. And in Stuart, in American, pegs are called clothespins.
That's right. Sometimes called bullets on sets that I've been on too. So whatever the current slang is where you work. Ruben Marchina from Grand Rapids, Michigan says, good morning. Thank you for yesterday's answer to my question but now I'm very curious about the device Courtney first showed before recommending the ATEM Mini. Courtney, do you remember what you had up before you got to the ATEM Mini in your answer yesterday?
No. What was the question?
Why did
What
I
did,
anticipate this was going to be a...
was it a MixPre 3? I could have hold
Might
on.
have been. What else do you have within hand's reach that you might have used yesterday for the demo?
I don't know.
In the chat, we've just been reminded it's the little mini PC that plugs in via the HDMI port with the wireless.
Yes. Okay.
Good.
Yeah,
So talk about that for a minute again.
That is a stick PC. It's from a cell, Quantum Access it's called, and it's uses an ATEM quad-core processor. It runs Windows 10. The newer ones have a LAN port on the end with gigabit Ethernet. This one does not. This does have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and it comes with these are 2 gigabytes and 16 gigabytes of MMS disk storage. So it won't hold a lot, but it does have a micro SD card slot, which you can stick in there and expand the memory up to 256 gigs. And I use them as, PC sources for rolling in graphics or video playback or extra Zoom rooms. Anything you can run on Windows PowerPoint presentations can run on that, and they're about $150 a piece. A lot cheaper than using a Mac Mini, and a lot smaller. And they have no fans, so they don't make any noise. No ports.
Very nice. And maybe because Guy is nice enough to up-res our thing, if you back up to when he showed the barcode, you might be able to freeze frame that, scan it, and get taken right to it. Who knows? Let's continue to move on. Dick Brewer, it looks like, in Guatemala says, have you seen ZoomTopia's keynote announcement of development SDK and ZAPP to tailor the Zoom platform? Any ideas diving into specific customization? I know the last couple of days people have been talking about ZAPP here in the early hours, so I think it's something that is heading toward us. John Preto, go ahead.
I watched that particular keynote, and there's a huge need for people to integrate applications. I have a specific one that we're working on, which is I don't even know what you call it. It's a biofeedback device that plugs in to USB and it measures your heart rate and all that kind of stuff. And then you have a mindfulness coach on the other end walking you through exercises, and you can see your heart rate, your skin conductance, and all. There's about 5 different biofeedback that would feed into Zoom while you were being coached.
Wow, that sounds like an interesting process. It's going to maybe take one additional step into helping people stay healthy. That's pretty cool. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? No? All right, we're moving along to Paul Wallace's from the panel. Whoops, I've managed to not mark that correctly. My bad. What's the best way to discover great streaming events online? What do people do here to find, what's your TV guide of streaming? Is there anything that performs that function and lets you see what's available? Jason, go ahead.
I'd say the easiest and most obvious answer to that is get involved with people who are into what you are involved in. Join a Discord, find a group that you like. Sure, the easy answer would be go on YouTube and say, search live streams or Twitch or something. But truth be told, that's entirely too much information. What you really want is something that's going to be bespoke and a shared interest between you and a group of people. So I would say, join Discord and ask around.
Sky, and then Victor. Go Sky.
Well, it used to be referred to as broadcasting because there were only 3 major channels of distribution. In television land anyway, there were a lot more in radio, but that's a different auditory medium versus a visual medium. So now that we have YouTube and this broad of 3,000 image or hours, what's the current number of content that's being uploaded to just YouTube as a distribution channel? It's like 300 hours.
75 billion.
It's physically 300 hours every 30 seconds. So there's just no way that you can put your face into that tsunami of information. So to Jason's point, narrowcasting, find your community, find your audience, and like Victor's doing, he's finding his audience. So, and grow from the bottom up, because the barrier to entry used to be the hardware and the distribution. And now everybody's ABC.
Okay, Victor, then Sky, then John. Or Victor,
On
then
Discord, there's a channel called Watch This, and a lot of us that are like-minded go in there, and there's some really good stuff there.
Okay, Guy Cochran. I met Victor. Guy, then John. Guy.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing in the Discord external events. The other one is become friends with in the chat. There's A. Mitchell's. He's always sending me cool stuff to watch. And sometimes at the last minute, I'm like, whoa, I'm glad that I tuned into this. I mean, nobody can watch everything, but it is nice if somebody can post some of this stuff in the external events. I subscribe to that channel. So if somebody puts something up at the last minute, I actually get an alert. Because some of this stuff is like, you don't know how good it is until you're watching it. And like the NAB event, I got to tune in for a little bit of that. There was a CMMA. That was a really good one to see breakout rooms. So when they're going on, it's cool to see people pushing the limits, and especially at a high quality level. So everybody watching, if you could please utilize that Discord external events and watch this, as Victor said, so we can, weed through the tough, the garbage out there and find the gold in the online universe.
Pull the wheat from the chaff.
In the new world of multi feeds that are accessible. John Preto to finish things up.
This is somewhat rhetorical for Paul, because this has always been a challenge. The platform that Paul and I met was called Blab, and they had a Who's On Now page. At Hello World in 2000, we had a site called Who's On Now, and it listed all of the live streams. Discoverability has always been a challenge, and nobody's done it right. Facebook has a link on the left-hand side that shows the live videos, and it shows some of the popular live videos that are on. I found very little relevant to me sifting through those shows that are there, but having discoverability on a live show, even on Zoom, I think is going to struggle with this as an issue of finding. On Blab, it was great because you'd have the rooms listed there. There'd be 20 or 30 live rooms. They'd have a title. You could pop in, you could watch the panelists talk, and then you could participate as an attendee, and you could pop from room to room to room. And there was some great discoverability in that regard, but it's been a challenge.
I'm reminded of Springsteen's song 57 channels and nothing on. Now we've got 57 million channels. And trying to find out what you're looking for is no small task. I'm going to just do a quick brief. We've got about 6 questions, which is fine. We got it easily enough to get to the top of the hour. We traditionally on Tuesday look at audio questions in our second hour, and we have one marked audio now. But if you have something specifically about audio, we're going to try to do the tradition. So mark that question with a all caps audio and a colon beforehand, and I will make sure we reserve it for the next, it looks like 7 minutes before we go into our audio discussion. So the next regular question, Sky Gleason from Seattle says, stage lights for a 30-foot wide platform in a church. What LED stage lights should I be looking at? He wants to know, anybody have, there's a huge industry out there of stage lighting and church, and I know that there's a ton of LED action in that area.
Well, and
Jeffrey?
it doesn't have to be LED, but I was just thinking for future proofing. And I didn't put the word budget in there. So I'm just now being asked to look into this, and coming from theater, I have a solution, but I'm open to what the new stuff is.
Okay, Jeffrey, and then Stuart. Jeffrey, go.
So it's really, you basically have 2 types of lights. You have LEDs that you can get off Amazon, and then you have the professional stage type lights. And the difference might be, especially if you're going to be doing any type of streaming, is are those lights going to end up with any type of flicker? And that's what you don't want if you're doing any type of streaming, as you know. So I would highly recommend, they're actually just down the street from me. It's a company called ETC. And you can call them up and you can say it's for a church, and you can spend an hour with one of the technicians there, probably somebody I even know, and talk about how you're going to set up stage lights, and they're going to give you solutions. It's also going to depend on how much money you have if you're going to go with them or another solution.
Well, and can you Discord me that info, please?
Okay, Stuart, do you want to toss in?
I just noticed that Chuck posted the same sort of ETC answer in the chat, but what I was going to point out was be very, very, very careful with any budget stage lighting, even if it's got DMX. I've seen some, excuse me, some truly horrid color rendition out of some of them. When the skin looks more like you would see on the Smurfs rather than on Zoom with this panel. You've got to be careful you don't get really bad colors out of them, and just look for stuff that is of a decent brand, somebody who's been doing stage lights for a long time that has LED as an option is a good place to start.
Well, if your church has a metal band, they might like that. Who knows?
Our facility probably won't last another 500 years, as in some we've just heard about. But in the meantime, we do have some stage lightings for at least to cover the fill. We've got Lecos and things up in the ceiling. But I'm looking for colored lights for ambiance.
Yeah, the ellipsoidal spotlight, or LECO, was the go-to theater long throw thing for decades, and I think they're making them in LEDs now. Guy, do you want to pop in on this?
Yeah, at first I thought he was talking about for the primary person or persons, a chorus or something like that, and I was just going to say you want to be careful of skin tones. You want to be also aware that you can buy better cameras. Brian and I had this discussion in the Discord where he was going to just put all this light on there, and I was like, what camera are you using? And it was like, wait, you can probably get an extra stop or two out of that lens, with a better sensor, better camera, and then you don't need twice or three times the amount of lights. So it's just something to think about before you go in, and because with lights comes cooling, custom electrical installs, and potentially ruining the building if it's going to be taken out. If it's just for is live streaming temporary or is it forever? So that's the thing, is there's just a lot more that goes into it. So you might want to call a local company that specializes in church facilities in particular.
That sounds like really good advice.
We have one of those, and I guess the motivation was when we put that incandescent light and I burned through the gel, and they said, you mean that could put a hole in the carpet? Well, that's what motivated them to think about it. So yeah.
There's been orders of magnitude improvement in the power to amount of light over the course of the last 10 years. It looks nothing like it did back when I was running everything incandescent off of airy kits that weighed 70, 80 pounds, and you had to lug them around and then find enough power in the building so that you didn't blow the breakers.
And then you could bake chicken on them.
Yeah, you're literally an airy 750 over the course of time. You want to wait like 3 or 4 minutes before you try to put it back in the case, because you'll actually burn yourself badly. Those are the old days. Jeffrey, go ahead.
One other thing is there's a lot of production companies that have been producing bands are sitting there on their hands, and they're looking for something to do. So you might want to talk with them, and they could even have some product that they're willing to sell at a pretty decent price, and then they can set up your stage lighting and go from there. So that might be an option.
Yeah, I think Jeffrey's showing is that one of the new COB Fresnel kind of things? Used to be back in the, when LEDs first came out, there were those arrays of LEDs, and they didn't work very well with Fresnel lenses. But now that they've moved to chip on board and they have single sources, we're starting to see that kind of light control come back into lighting when it wasn't there for a long time. So that's been a big improvement in low budget lighting. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. Michael,
thank you all.
Oh, that's okay. We hope we were able to help you and give you what you wanted to hear about. Michael J. in New York City says, anyone see David Byrne's Utopia stage performance with live band and no stage monitors, amps, wires, and so forth? How was it done? I missed it. I'm a big David Byrne fan since he was with the Talking Heads. And that Stop Making Sense video, I still think, is one of the most interesting combinations of music and art direction. We all remember the giant white suit. Had anybody see it, Jeffrey?
Yeah, I saw it. It was really good. I kind of wondered if they did it over, just like with Hamilton, they might have done it over more than one night and then produced only sections from each night on there. I know for a fact that the product that we're using for our monitor on the audio is the company is actually what they chose for some of their signal processing waves. What I can't remember the full name, but anyway, they have. So they were using that in a lot of in-ears and a lot of headsets, of course, to make sure that everybody can hear what was going on.
Was it a one-off live thing, or is it on YouTube or some other portal that people can go?
It's on HBO and HBO Max. You
Okay.
can, if you've got a subscription, you can get that and watch it from there. And it was also directed by Spike Lee.
Oh, that'll be fun. All right. Very cool. I'm going to have to put that on my to-do list. Moving on through our questions, Dave Guzman of San Jose says, I know people on the panel have been playing with Big Sur. How does it feel? Is it stable? To Victor's point, are there things missing in terms of device and app support? Do we have any early adopters who have been messing around with Big Sur yet? Nobody's, I guess it probably hasn't shipped yet. So maybe anybody who's touched it is under NDA and can't talk about it, even if they had some experience with it. Yeah, that's that, Apple's way is usually nobody who's not on that special insider status gets to see anything before it hits the public. And all right, so the answer, I'm sorry to say, is no. No one has seen it. Nobody knows anything about it. Keenan Campbell of Princeton, Illinois is back with talk about your wearable mics for these rooms. I guess he's talking about anybody on the panel in the panelist view who has a wearable mic and what you're using. I'll start out. I'm using a Countryman B3 capsule in a little holder that puts it near my mouth and gives you the same geometry of close miking that a head-worn mic from any other manufacturer would use. Anybody else? Victor, you want to pop in on what you're using?
Today it's a DPA 4066 that I bought from the DVE store, and it's a very, very good mic.
Jeffrey?
I use a company called Micronic. They're based out of the UK, but if you want to buy them in the United States, you can always go on eBay to purchase them. The one thing about these dual hook headset mics is they do have interchangeable plugs, so I can do a T4F or a Sony plug or a Sennheiser plug if I needed it.
That's nice. Jeff Francis, and then Sky.
So kind of at the high end is the DPA and the Countryman H6. Victor's got the DPA 4066. And then at the bottom of the barrel is the Polson, which is what I'm talking in now, and the Pile. DPA and Countryman are in the hundreds of dollars. DPA is like $600 or more. Pile and Polson are in the $20 range. All of them are a little tiny omnidirectional electret, and it's put right next to your mouth, so you get less room and more direct sound right from the speaker, which is what's great about it. So it's positioning, positioning, positioning.
Sky next, then Kev.
I believe I'm using the Countryman, formerly on Guy's Cochrane's head, and so I was able to purchase that from him. I think it's the E6. It has a nice flexibility of, molding to your ear and then shaping it to get to whichever direction you want to get to your head. We also are recommending, with my talent, we're going to start looking into surgical tape to keep it a little closer because she flails a lot with knives.
And I'm using a Pile Pro, and I'm right at the bottom. This is £20 worth of voice you're hearing.
Fair enough. So there's a lot, and I think unless depending on what you're recording, if I was going straight into a really high resolution thing, I think I would probably be able to tell the difference between the $9 ones and the $150 ones. But for a Zoom conference from home, I'm not sure much of anybody could. I don't want to slam Zoom with that because Zoom is improving their audio transmissibility tremendously over the course of time. But generally, I have been surprised. I've used Countryman's and things like that in some circumstances where the audio chain didn't preserve all of its potential bass. And I once did a thing on stage where the engineers behind stage managed to leave in the low end of my voice. And it was a revelation. It was like, that's the same mic I've used 3 or 4 times and it sounds totally different. So that's a piece is how it's EQ'd as well. Stuart, go ahead.
I should point out I'm not actually on a mic of that sort. My mic is there. But what I did notice was Brett Dykes in the chat has actually mentioned working on the show we were just mentioning, David Byrne's Utopia, and saying that, yes, it was shot across 4 days, 2 with an audience and 2 without.
Awesome. Yeah, I think as much control for a big performer like that who has a gigantic fan base and you want to put out a really first-class show, the idea of multiple takes, multiple days, and picking the best of them, that's pretty much, I think, what everybody at that level is going to want to do. I'm going to try to get through some of these non-audio. I can see that they were mixing audio like our last question with some of the non-things. So let's see if we can dig through some of those non-audio questions real fast so that we can go 100% audio, and we've got a few of those left. Stephen Brewer of Seattle says, does Guy have the ATEM Mini riser to reduce heat available? If not, is there another maker I could send Courtney's design to and specs and have one produced? Did we ever get that all settled out?
I never did, because when we were doing pricing, it was about trying to send them to China to get it done for the cheapest. And so when I looked at the time frame, it didn't meet my time frame. And then Courtney came up with a brilliant design. And so I was going to hit up Courtney to see how many he could print, if he could do like a couple hundred for me. I didn't know what his capacity was. So that was something I've been meaning to do, just to, because on my ATEM Mini, I was having some problems with it sending out a black image. Like it would literally freeze up because it got too hot. So I have mine now on this this stand that has holes in it, so the heat dissipates underneath. So anybody who has one of these ATEM Minis, I highly recommend getting one of these little 3D printed stands from. We can somebody can put a link in the Discord or in the chat, but it basically helps get that flow underneath there, and definitely don't block the fan on either the intake on the left or maybe it's the other way around. There's an intake and there's an outlet, so you want to be careful of blocking either of those because it'll freeze the thing up. So Courtney, what do you say about printing a couple hundred of those for me? You got the capacity?
You know, Sky, the printers are, you can get one for under $200, and I printed mine out on my under $200 printer, and it works just fine with TPU. I posted the design on Thingiverse, and I put links in Discord in the chat, so you can download it for free and go to town. And I can put up to about 10 or 12 of them on my printer's base plate at a time, so you can print out about 6 pair.
What color do you want? Or maybe we take Vipul's suggestion and we have the different families from around the world, and we ship the concrete to them, and then they chip it away at it.
This Stuart and then Paul Wallace. Go, Stuart.
I just noticed that there's a new Ender belt design printer that would be able to run these off like a production line. So if anyone happens to have bought one, that might be a business opportunity.
Let's see if somebody shows up with a light bulb over their head with cottage industry displayed above it. Paul Wallace?
Yeah, I have a ATEM Mini, and I tried to adapting a heat sink with the fan in it onto the bottom. It was real heavy, didn't really work. So I'm really looking for another solution. Maybe Guy has some suggestions, but is there any good fan that might be used on a tablet or laptop that you could adapt to the ATEM Mini to cool it down? And I did notice on the ATEM Mini that the left side is hot and the right side is cool. Those are the vents that Guy said not to block. So I'll toss it over to Guy for maybe a comment on that.
Yeah, there were some folks that were building these into cases and stuff, and it always scared me to see how much heat's going to build up, because again, I've had mine just stop outputting, and a lot of people have had the same thing. That's why they've developed these little risers. I'll put a link in the chat just so you can see that with the one that's like $20 for a pair. It's just 2 3D printed stands that kind of gets it up. Courtney's solution is great for me, because if I want to print a bunch, it's not a bunch of pieces, and it's not going to take forever to print. And I did see somebody who came out with a USB fan, so it plugs into USB and it just circulates. So low moving, not very loud. I'll see if I could find that one. That might be a little, it was in one of the Facebook ATEM Mini groups, but I'll see if I can dig that up.
Before Jeffrey actually answers this, mine's on a little jewelry case riser, and this is your plastic, and you can get 3 of these from Amazon or whatever. And I don't have a heat problem here because I've got a very quiet ceiling fan that moves air around. It hasn't been hot, but I could just take a drill and drill a whole bunch of holes in that, and I think that would be the really no money crazy solution. But Jeffrey, give us your thoughts.
So yeah, I've tested this, and I've talked to Blackmagic about it. It gets up to about 135 degrees on the bottom side of the plate, and they said it's kind of by design. And I'm going to switch over to my ATEM Mini, but my button's not working, so let's switch it over this way and do this. So basically what happens is the fan spins right about here on the right side, and shoots this way to the left side. So the heat's coming out this way. There is a vent on the right side. You could put a fan on the right side to push it through more, but that's going to hurt this fan even more if you're forcing air into it. Now, getting back to the whole plate on the bottom, putting a fan on the bottom, the problem with that is the heat sink and the fan. The problem with that is that it's still collecting heat, but nowhere to go. I think if you were to actually open it up and put a hole or two in the bottom of the ATEM, the heat would disperse a little bit better that way. But I don't think you want to do that just yet. So I would say the best thing to do is just a nice piece of aluminum, or as they say over the pond, aluminium, that would work as a heat sink, and just use it that way, and or even raise it like Guy says to get more air underneath it.
Okay, here's the Triad Orbit stand that I'm using that has a bunch of holes in it just to circulate underneath, and that's kind of a pricey option though. This is like $100 for this thing, but I use it for a lot of other things, and it's kind of a neat design because you can get these little bolts that go through each of these holes, and so kind of a neat thing to look at. That company's Triad Orbit.
Very nice. Victor's had his hand up for quite a while. Hit it, Victor.
I use these Thermopack. You can put this underneath, and it has material inside that, dissipates the heat. It seems to work.
Okay, so there's a variety of different potential solutions. Hope you can find something that does it for you. I think we have maybe two more questions that are not specifically audio. So let's dive through those as fast as we can. The first one comes from Tim Corbin in Baltimore. It says, has anyone ever needed to convert video content into SCORM compliant courses for a learning management system? If so, what approach do you take? And I have never had to do it. I've had lots of narration projects that have talked about SCORM compliance in manufacturing and big business. And I know it's a huge deal, sometimes based on contractual requirements from big companies. So but I don't see anybody who's waving a hand. So maybe nobody in this panel has had to work with that. I guess the only thing to do is maybe wait for Alex to come back, and maybe Alex has run into that kind of thing. It's a pretty specific technical requirement for some projects. So my guess would be the best thing to do would be just keep coming back. Jeffrey, do you know anything specific about it?
No, I don't, but I need to have Stuart give you the co-host because I've got to head out.
Oh, okay. So inside baseball as we dive into the next part of audio. He's got the con now, so it's going to go down to Stuart.
I'm just going to interrupt for a second. I think I gave you co-host at the start of the show to make sure that there was a backup in case it failed.
Let's see. Yes, I do have co-host, so I'm giving Stuart co-host now.
Okay. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
No, you keep it. You keep it. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got co-host. Sky is cutting the show, so he's got host, and I think everything is fine. All right, we're going to move on to Ruben.
No, I'm cutting the show, Bill.
Who is? Oh, I'm sorry, Stuart. You are. Yeah. My apologies. I hate to give credit where credit isn't due. Ruben Marcheni of Grand Rapids, Michigan, says he has an issue while using Proclaim. Church software presentation and using Zoom. Zooms work great to bring in a speaker. The problem is after closing Zoom, I have to restart everything, including the sound recording. Why is that? Does anybody here use Proclaim or do a lot of church switching that we could give Ruben some help with? Sky, go ahead.
We use what's called Media Shout, and what used to go up to the big screens in the front of the sanctuary is now going to me into my ATEM channel 4, and then that person down at the other end of that desk gives me the slides, gives me whatever roll-in pre-vid or any source that they're giving, and then I hit switch on channel 4, and then it goes full screen and projects out to YouTube, which is our end destination.
Okay, hopefully that gives Ruben some pathways to explore. And I think we now have taken care of everything except the audio stuff. So we are still open for new questions if anybody wants to add more things. But traditionally on Tuesday, our audio has been the focus of our second hour. So we're going to dive into our first one, which comes from panelist Jeff Francis. Does anyone have a multi-channel audio interface connected to Zoom? And can Zoom see or use more than those first two channels? Anybody?
Victor, you and I were seeing this the other day with
Yeah,
your
I pretty much have
X32.
validated it. Yeah, I think I can only see the first 2 channels.
Okay, so if you're trying to use a multi-channel interface, use multiple inputs, you need to make sure that they can route over those first 2 USB channels.
That's what I've had to do. I've had to reroute stuff, as you know. We had to reroute the stuff so it would go to channels 1 and 2.
Right. You don't see additional audio inputs in Zoom. Just a single X32 input.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Okay, moving along. The next question comes from Hasmuk on the panel. Yeah, there he is. He's with us today, and he wants to talk lavalier mics. This could go on for a while. The Shure PG48 I used last week as a mic seemed to have received approval by the panel. Advice was to keep the mouth close to the mic. I have Sennheiser lavalier mics as well. Seems that lavalier mics are not favored by the panel. Why? And Jason, why don't you start? I'll come in a little later.
It's pretty simple. We tend to move, and for the most part, it's as simple as that. The way that the benefit to Bill's kind of headset looking thing is that no matter what he does, unlike this big honking thing that sounds terrific here, but the minute I come away from it, it's gone. It is exactly that. So take that and multiply it by 10 with a lavalier. Also, there's nothing worse than that scratchy clothing sound.
Yeah. And lavaliers are kind of a different beast. They're designed for center mounting. They're designed to sound best pretty much directly below, because that's how they tune them all. The big advantage of lavaliers when you're using them out for things like a remote video thing, well, there's 2 things. Number one, they're small and can be hidden. And the high-end lavaliers have all sorts of mounting accessories that make them incredibly flexible for like hiding in costumes, and people also use them as hair mics. They're literally, if a character in a period piece is wearing a wig, you can hide a lavalier really above the forehead. I actually heard a story once where they were talking about the play, the musical Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and I saw it once at an auditorium, and it was being led by Sam Harris, the singer who won one of those Idol type shows early. He was a fabulous singer, but I couldn't believe it because he came out on stage basically wearing a diaper. And my first thought, which was terrible because I should have just been enjoying the show, was how did they mic him? I mean, there's literally no place to hide a wire. There's no place to hide anything. And I was at NAB about 2 years after that, and I was talking to one of the people from, I think it was Sennheiser, and I mentioned this in our conversation. He said, okay, yeah, we were involved in that. And they had the transmitter in his diaperish type thing. And then they ran the wire up his back, and they used moleskin, which is a stickable flesh colored thing to hide the wire, and put his mic in the hair. And in doing that, you can make a microphone rig system completely disappear on somebody that you have to see from all sides. I think Broadway is probably the best pool of talent for learning how to hide mics in the most incredible circumstances. And those little tiny lavalier capsules that are sweat-proof and robust is kind of the go-to solution in those kind of circumstances. That's not what we're doing in this kind of circumstance. We're all sitting in a pretty fixed position. So whether you're wearing a headset mic so that, as Jason said, you're never off axis no matter where you turn your head, or you're in something in front of a broadcaster's mic, which were designed really for radio because it's going to stay in a fixed position as Jason's using it. And you have to be mindful of how you're addressing it. It's like horses for courses. There's all sorts of different microphones, and they each have their own use case that is best. Courtney, is that a hand up and you want to pop in on this?
I think you've covered just about everything. The reason you might use a lavalier and why they're used in movies and television is because you don't want to see a microphone. You don't want to look like the Borg with something stuck on the side of your face. So anytime you're going to have video of someone in a close-up, and it's not for just a Zoom call, a lavalier works good. And like you said, Bill, you can tape them to your chest, hide them under clothing. And a lot of the capsules, lavalier capsules, are designed to accentuate the high-end frequency to compensate for burying it under clothing. And if you bury it under clothing, and they also make elastic straps that go around your waist that'll hold the transmitter against your back. That way you can do quick wardrobe changes and not have to worry about rewiring anyone or running wires through the clothes or anything. That can become difficult if you're having to do fast wardrobe changes in a live show or in a stage show of some sort.
Hasmik, go ahead. You want to dive into more questions, or did we cover?
No. I can understand if you, as a talent, are sitting down. So then a headset mic or a mic on a stand in front of you is efficient. But I've been watching our main TV channel, and I observed that the newscaster and the weather lady, they all have lavaliers. Mm-hmm. And the weather lady is not quite stationary. She's quite mobile as she presents the weather. So, the lavalier sounds pretty good on her. So I was just wondering if you have a talent that is mobile, maybe, and you don't have a headset, can one get away with a lavalier?
You can in a lot of cases. Though on news sets, that's been kind of the standard since literally the 60s and 70s. In fact, even if you look back at classic TV, I remember the Today Show decades ago. One of the first hosts maybe the first one was Dave Garroway, and he had a lav that was about 3 or 4 inches long, a big honking thing that sat on his chest. And I think that tradition carried on for many years of newscasters at desks. You'll see often the gentlemen in suits with a little double-headed lavalier. They're not trying to hide it and fake anybody out. They just know that getting it close to the mouth, the inverse square principle, is still the thing that's going to trump everything else. So you want that distance to be reasonably consistent. And an omnidirectional lavalier capsule, even if you go a little off axis, it's not going to go that far down. That distance, and that distance are not so dissimilar. It's not like you're doubling the distance where you expect a 4 times fall off and it's real audible. Jason, you want to dive in on this?
Yeah, just a little note for history. Lavaliers get their name from the jewelry with the same name because originally lavaliers were actually worn as necklaces. And if you see any old television, that is exactly what you'd see. With that, I'm sorry, I've got to duck out, but thanks, everyone.
Bye, Jason. Good to see you. Yeah, actually, when I read the first story about it, I heard they were named for Louis the 14th mistress, Madame Lavalier, and he gave her a big honking jewelry pendant.
That's right.
And
it was called a lavalier.
That's what developed into lavalier. So, Jeff Francis.
So Hasmik, remember that those news environments are a controlled sound environment, so there's not a lot of room sound to worry about there, and they're listening via an in-ear monitor, so there's not live speakers in the room. Where you're going to get into trouble with lavaliers when you're trying to use them in presentations where there's actual amplification, and the headset mic is going to win out over that. But otherwise, you can pick up good sound with them, and they're used in film all the time.
Okay, so we're moving on to Paul Prusalowski's question.
One quick.
Yeah, sure, Sky.
Historical point is I have a photo of Graham Kerr, and they're physically taping a microphone the size of a cigarette lighter to his chest and running a cable down his pants, the size of a garden hose. So we've come a long way.
Yeah, running XLR cables down and around talent was it's just something you had to do. And I can't tell you the number of times I've been on one knee behind a male talent just saying, yeah, loosen your belt and I'm going to just try to get this thing down and shake your pant leg and things like that. This is the behind the scene things. Sometimes you can tell the experience level of a talent by, I'd walk up and have to mic a young lady and, I'm trying to be really respectful and the rest of that. And sometimes you can tell they're a little nervous and you want to be really, really careful in that circumstance because you don't want to take them out of their performance thing. And so you don't want to make them feel it all. And then you'll find some model who's been doing this for decades and they'll just go, yeah, just mic it. They don't want to talk to you about it because they've done this 1,000 times before and they understand this is your job, this is their job. As long as you're not fumbly and you're not trying to figure out how to do it, everything is cool. And that's just how theater works. The rules of theater are everybody's a professional, everybody needs to know what they're doing, and you just don't want to get in anybody's head anytime you're working on a performer who has to go out and perform. You want them to be clear of thought when they go do that. Stuart, you're up next.
A lot of the actors that I've worked with will be the same when it comes to the professionalism. It's like just mic it. A lot also figure out how to mic it themselves, and they will just clip it in place and say, you adjust it, and they drop the cable and run it themselves. But the other good way of avoiding that sort of situation is have an intern who happens to be female.
Yeah, those are all good things. Again, I think the most important part of this is your main job is not to take the performer out of their performance by making them feel any emotion that is outside of what the character has to portray. So the little things really matter. I mean, I'm relatively tall. I'm about almost 6'2". And if I'm miking a female talent who is short, I always drop to one knee so that I'm looking up at her. And it's a psychological thing. I'm trying to say, you're important. I'm not important. I'm also not hovering over her. It's these little things of respect on a set that make a huge difference in making things go smoothly. Jeff Francis?
And also just talking through what you're going to do right before you do it so that everything is clear. But this is what's going to happen, and then it happens.
Right. I have to do this because of this. Excuse me, and let me know if I'm pinching you or anything else is happening as I apply a clip or something like that to the wire. They appreciate that. Yes, Courtney.
Also, in our current pandemic situation, there are a lot of restrictions and rules now that we can't touch the talent unless you're in full PPE. And a lot of most sound mixers I know now, if they're doing, for dramatic work, they're teaching from a distance, teaching the talent how to put their own microphone on and handing it to them and let them rig their own microphone. So that they don't have to have contact, and so everything has to be sterilized.
We see a much more about that, and that has to do with that kind of thing I was saying about an experienced model or an experienced actress or an experienced actor. They almost know better than you because, if you're starting your career, you may have mic'd 100 people. They might have been mic'd 1,000 times if they're really good at it. So listen to.
You have to remember to send an A2 or your boom person out to retrieve the microphone, because a lot of times they'll forget about it because it's so far out of the way, and they'll end up at home and go, "Oh, I'm still."
I had a professional speaker get on a flight with my body pack, and it really annoyed me because it took 3 years to get it back, and for 3 years it was down a system because I didn't go immediately and retrieve my equipment. Okay, I think we've pretty much.
They'll be arrested by the TSA if they try and go through the scanner.
Yeah, that was a different time. Moving on to Paul Pruzalowski's next question from Gainesville, Florida. With regards to over-ear mics, I purchased some low-cost pile-over Omni mics for guests who tend to break everything. I thought I would be able to plug them directly into my mixer, but they required me to run through my Sennheiser wireless power pack. What over-the-ears can run direct into a mix with an XLR? And this is a power thing, and Kevin's going to start us out talking about it.
Yeah, I think everybody else is going to say this as well, that these pile mics, they have different optional plugs. So you can match if you're using Sennheiser packs, or if you just simply want to use a standard 3.5 wave mini jack to a computer input, for example, you can buy them. You just have to be very careful in choosing which model you're looking at. And that's the trick, basically.
Yeah, we've talked about this. Go ahead, John Preto, and then Jeff Francis.
So I have the pile mic here somewhere on my desk. It plugs directly into my mic port in my PC, and it works perfectly. Colin has the Yamaha mixer that has mic in, and it works perfect in that regard. I think the bias voltage is 3 to 5 volts for the pile. That's what it's looking for.
Yeah, Guy has a piece that he's holding up there. So do you want to?
Yeah, I couldn't get my PTZ. I was trying to focus on my PTZ so you can get the close-up. If you give me just a second, I can cut to this. It's the Rode VXLR. It's got, come on. Tough to, come on. Anyways, it's got the Sennheiser locking on one side. Come on, focus. Anyways, I can't get this thing.
Does that have a battery, Guy, or does it use 48 volt and convert it down?
It takes the 48 and I'm sorry, I'm like trying to get this thing to focus. Yeah, it takes the 48 volt and steps it down to 2.5 to 5 volt, depending on what's required.
Now, some of these headset mics, Guys, is an example, use the little 3.5 millimeter. The other very popular one is TA4F TA5F, and sometimes TA3F connectors. Those are the Sennheiser body pack, and others. Sony's, I think, use them. I'm going to reach over here and see if I can grab one. Yeah. So this is, I think, the Pile version that has a little TA. A guy is right there now pinned using the lockable Electrosonics connector that is very popular. So that's the Rode screw-in connector of that type to an XLR. I have here in my right hand the XPA A65P, which is another version of that same thing. And this one is designed to take a TA4F connector that you would see on this particular Pile mic. So this clicks into there, and it takes the 48-volt phantom power, steps it down to the 3.5 volts that this original Pile double headset mic uses with that connector. And so there's a variety of different connector inputs and outputs that need different power. Victor, go ahead and dive in.
Just want to clarify, Guy, I'm assuming you meant the VXLR Plus, because the regular
that's exactly what I was
VXLR
holding up, VXLR Plus, because that's the one that'll convert the power. If you just have a regular VXLR, you can torch your mic because it'll feed the full 48 volt right down the line, and puff of smoke. There goes.
You will get the smoke of life out of your electric component. Jeff Francis, go ahead.
Yeah, the TA4F is a Shure wireless standard, and the thing to be careful about is there are two separate 3.5 millimeter. There's the standard 3.5 millimeter TS, and then there's the screw terminal Sennheiser version, which is a TRS. So be careful about which one you're purchasing. The adapter that Guy showed works with the Sennheiser TRS threaded adapter.
Okay. So yeah, it's a little more complicated than it first looks. Sometimes you think, oh, this plug goes in this socket, surely it will work. And I think we've all experienced it kind of not working. Courtney, was that something that we need to look closely at that you held up?
That was just the the connector he was talking about, the TRS with a locking collar on it, which is designed to screw down.
Usually when you're on Amazon, just pay attention. It'll say 4 Sennheiser transmitters or 4 Shure transmitters, and that will tell you the type of connector. And then I think if you drill down, you can actually look at it, make sure the number of pinholes and the number of pins on the two connectors match up, or you'll have to send it back and get something different. Okay, I think we've answered all of that stuff. We're moving on to Tim Corbin's question from Baltimore. And Tim said, what would a good choice for one step down from an X32 compact or producer in terms of similar functionality, just on a slightly smaller scale and closer to $1,000 US dollars? Is an X32 a mixer? I'm not familiar with that. Oh, Victor, go ahead.
Yeah, the X32 is the mixer that I got. And for about $1,300, you can get the rack mount version of that. But Behringer also makes a unit called the X18 that you can use in with an iPad. And it is a smaller digital mixer. So you might want to look at the X18 or the X32 rack, although they're almost impossible to find right now.
Okay, I think we've taken care of that. Let's move it over into answered. And next we're James Babbitt of San Diego here says, for a member of a Zoom meeting who doesn't want to use in-ear monitors, earbuds, or headphones, what are some ways to listen on loudspeakers instead? Stuart has his hand up, and so does Jeff. We'll go to Stuart first.
Without a microphone. So you can't have any echo that way. Just let them use whatever loudspeakers they're not, but they're not allowed to talk.
I will say that in the worst circumstances, the direct microphone to speaker feedback loop can be one of the most annoying sounds, a squealy, loud, sharp, piercing thing that will annoy everybody on your set to the point where they will wince and say, get rid of that right now. It's terrible. Jeff
It's a
Francis.
great educator as well, isn't it?
John Proto, your mic is open. John Proto.
Monitors at low level, well-balanced monitors, but you need to leave and let Zoom do its echo cancellation. So do not turn on original sound. Leave original sound off, let Zoom do its echo cancellation, and that will cancel that sound in the room. You won't be able to get as good a fidelity, but that'll work for someone who doesn't want to wear headphones.
Yeah, sometimes for the first little tiny bit, the echo is there and then it'll suppress it. So give it a good try. Courtney, go ahead.
And use a directional mic. Put your speaker further away from you behind the dead side of the mic so that the microphone is not pointed at it in any way if you're using an open mic. If you're not using a headset, of course, a headset mic, he said didn't want to wear a headset mic. Yeah. So a good directional mic pointed away from the speaker so the speaker's in the dead zone, and keep the speaker at a low volume, because even if you have original sound turned off, you'll get that annoying
and if you're learning this stuff, it's good to go to Google and look up.
Cancellation on Zoom sounds really nice. Sounds like aliens in the background.
Yeah. Look up microphone polar patterns, and you will see the various cardioid, supercardioid, omnidirectional. You'll see the polar patterns. And if you learn how to read those, you can sometimes see where the nulls are in a particular type of microphone. Kev, go ahead. You had your hand up for.
Yeah, just to simply say to the person who has this problem about using technology, whoever it is you're talking to about this member, ask them not to shout, because that's as bad as not being heard if they're screaming because they've got no mic on. And people do, especially if they see speakers a long way away, they've got to go to those.
Yeah. One of the toughest lessons I had to learn as an announcer in the early days to try to be relatively even in the output, because you get excited about things and all of a sudden your voice is like significantly louder, and then, I've been chastised and I want to come back to something and it's just like drives the audio professionals trying to do the best job for the audience crazy. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, the irony of that, of course, was the TV show in the Rich and Famous. That was a style that he chose because it showed energy. And so they modified the audio, but that was his concept, was everything was important and on the Rich and Famous.
What was his name? I can't remember the name of the guy who hosted that.
Robin Leach.
Robin Leach. Yeah, you're right. He pretty much bellowed his way through those big rooms pretty consistently from the top to the bottom of the show. Okay, that should take care of James.
He was 20 years ahead of his time.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that was ahead. I'm particularly not fond of the screamer style. I used to go in occasionally and I'd get a car commercial from a local car dealer and they went, power, power, power. And so I would have to do that kind of read. And if
Sunday.
Yeah, if they put you through 25, 30 takes of that is you're going to go home and take a nap. Ranjan Shandy of Los Angeles is here with, anyone have any experience with the Whirlwind Split 6? And Jeff has his hand up. Go, Jeff.
I have not directly used this box, but I looked at what it is, and it is simply a passive split. So it takes one audio XLR input and gives you 6 audio XLR outputs. You need to be very careful with using that. You do not want to use it with microphones. You want to use transformer isolation when splitting microphones. Also, what you're doing is you're actually paralleling all 6 inputs that you're hitting. So their impedances will go down, which is okay to a certain regard if everything is well designed, balanced outputs and inputs that have proper impedances, low output impedance on the output, high input impedance on the inputs. If any one of those inputs gets shorted, it will short out your entire signal. So you do have that danger in splitting to all of those.
Okay, that's a good basic technical. These are the things to look out for. So well done as always, Jeff. And the final question, it looks like we're down to our last one. Stuart Fairweather from the panel right here comes in with, besides a couple of Sennheiser G3 transmitter receiver pairs, what would be an alternative for sending line level audio wirelessly from a field recorder to multiple cameras? So we want a wireless distribution for audio, one signal going to many receivers. Anybody have a good or inexpensive version of that? I'm not seeing anybody, even all the audio experts I still see in the panel in there. Courtney, you want to take a swing at it?
Well, Electrosonics makes a pretty good wireless system that you can, then you use one of the old analog systems that as long as you're not worried about security or anything, you can use a single transmitter and then just buy multiple receivers and put multiple receivers on the same frequency.
Yeah, the biggest problem with that I found is you end up owning a lot of receivers that don't have transmitters to match them, or you end up buying 6 full systems. And
in-ear monitors, I mean, they use them a lot for monitoring for the boom persons and things like, similar to Comtech. Comtech makes some, which is the most common used broadcast monitoring systems. They used to be at 72 megahertz. Then they went to 216 megahertz, so they're on their own separate frequency. And Comtech is used quite a bit for transmitting just now not necessarily a high quality signal because it can drop out without a receiver that has two antennas on it. But it will give you just a backup reference recording on a lot of cameras just so that they can sync them up, and that's a lot of times what they use.
What if you could use a comm system like the RTSs and the ClearComms to do that too? Maybe interesting.
They're limited frequency response because they're designed for comms, but
a guy has up a electrosonics unit.
On the high end, this just got released. It's called the Digital Camera Hop Transmitter, and the clarity of these are unbelievable. It's like having a wire. I know you guys don't want to believe that, and in some ways, it could actually sound better than a wire. And I know you don't want to believe that either. But they have some analog to digital conversion going on. And when I borrowed the in-ear version of this, I could not believe how good it sounded. Like my regular headphones sounded way better because of the chips that they're using inside. So Electrosonics knows what they're doing. They're pretty much a standard. I know this is on the super high end, but I just wanted to answer the question just because I saw this come out and got to test it. So amazing stuff.
That's pretty cool. I mean, Electrosonics has been one of the leading
How many
brands.
How many Alexes is that?
A bunch of
I want to say these are like 1,200, and then this is just the receive side. So you need or this is the transmitter side. You need the receive side as well. So you need both sides. So you're talking like $2,500 a channel.
How does that fit into your chain, Guy? How does it fit into your chain? Do you have a diagram showing how it all fits together?
Yeah, transmitter hooks onto the output of your mixer, and then on the camera side, it's just you could go XLR, mini XLR, or 1/8 inch, depending on what your camera is. Like on the Blackmagic 6K, you'd get a little mini XLR that would go in, and that's it.
What is the latency on those guys? Does it say? Because that's the thing.
Digital, so it's
digital
quick.
transmission. You don't want latency involved because sync will be out.
Well, I would imagine Sennheiser wouldn't have sent that out if it wasn't within acceptable limits.
Electrosonics.
That's Electrosonics.
Oh, Electrosonics. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Electrosonics has a fine reputation, and I'm sure they don't want to damage it with, it's got a 1 second latency. But it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I would say that this is for live. I wouldn't say you want there is going to be latency. If you want something for live, you still want radio. This is digital so there is going to be a slight millisecond delay. I don't know. I haven't looked at the exact specs, but it's fast.
I think my Sennheiser AVX system, which is far less expensive than that, has something like, I want to say 17 milliseconds or something like that. And I just ignore it. And I don't really see, if I get down into subframe editing, I can sometimes see there's a little offset, but that's so fast that it doesn't really impede my ability to use the signal. We actually had a couple more questions come in the last few minutes here. So if everybody's done, on that's a cool unit.
Bill, if I can,
sure,
Guy, you're welcome to send me that, and I will test it on the feature film that I have to shoot next year.
Your local Electrosonics dealer will be happy to.
I'm actually looking for a solution to make sure that we don't end up with any conflicting frequencies. Our audio team use the Sennheiser mics for like lapel mics and boom and what have you, and I just want to make sure there's no conflicts there. I've used Sennheiser and Sony mics together in the past and have had crosstalk interference in the actual transmission, not the audio side.
Yeah, and it's gotten more complicated over the years because I think we've talked before about the fact that there used to be everything was VHF, and then they opened up UHF band, and so there were competing bands, at least here in the U.S. And then they sold off part of those spectrums for use, I think, by TV broadcasters and things like that. So they deprecated certain channels, and you couldn't get on them. And for a while, I know people were having trouble with cell phones bleeding into the old deprecated channels of their old wireless equipment, and it got kind of messy for a
We've had the same thing done here, Bill, where we had to shift TV stations and whatever. The government sold off part of the bandwidth to the phone companies, and a whole heap of audio stuff was just basically devalued overnight, and everybody had to change it.
Yeah, I think the big warning for that is the people who are getting into the business. If you find a really good deal on a wireless set that looks really professional but is a few years old, just do your due diligence and make sure that the frequencies that it is on are still viable for your particularly regulated area. And if not, yeah, hopefully they'll sell them in another country, another part of the world where that is not a conflict. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, for the guys that are doing this a lot like Mickey, they have the gear that has the ability to scan. So if not the full software, like I have the full software, so I'll scan all frequencies. So I'll use my receiver and it'll scan everything, and then it'll tell you this is open. I suggest here, here, and here. And even if you have 16 transmitters, it'll just go boom, 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 and line them all up for you. And if somebody else pops one on, it'll warn you and tell you to, jump out of there. One of the cool things about somebody who does this a lot, they'll have high gain antennas, and they'll be able to have that antenna reject all these other frequency ranges. So they're just sitting in that range. So it's almost impossible to get a hit. So there's something to be said about hiring a Mickey, if you will, to do this stuff if you want to walk away with no hits and have perfect audio, even in high RF environments, because they're coordinating that frequency for you.
I think a Mickey is out of our budget range, but a Sarah Tar is getting there very quickly.
Okay. Moving on, second to the last one now that a couple more have come in. Sky says, what wireless audio for in-ear to talent? Is that's kind of parallel to what we've just been talking about, but specifically for in-ear monitors. Does anybody have?
Well, I've got Madeline on the Rode Go to my MixPre 3, but she's listening off of my laptop that's just blaring into the room. So I'm wondering if I should wire her. And of course I need to do it without cabling because again, knives and
yeah. I think Comtech was one of the major players in that space for many, many years. I don't know if they're still the top end. Oh, there we go. And Courtney just popped up. Comtech in-ear monitor drivers. Hasmuk, do you have a question?
No. I have the Sidekick in-ear monitors. So I use the Rode Go connected to my MixPre to go with the Sidekick wireless.
Okay. So there are some solutions out there that are low latency and not crazy expensive. Guy, do you have other suggestions?
Yeah, since Sky happens to have the MixPre, he can route her audio so that she does not hear herself, because that's the important thing when you're using these for in-ear monitors is you want to send the talent back the mix minus themselves. So you need a device that can do that, because otherwise they're gonna get confused or sound like I had too many drinks if you send them out that.
Yeah, we already had that issue last week. So yeah, and I do. In fact, Mickey set this up, and it's called the Guy setting.
So there's an official setting.
Now you need the Madeline setting because it's going to be different.
But yes, I'm probably thinking I'll probably use the Sennheiser that I bought from you years ago for her microphone, and then I'll use the Rode Go to feed back audio into her head, so that way she's wireless. Yes.
Yeah, I noticed on the show that she was having an issue with her head-worn mic. Was that a pile, or which one was that? Is that why you were talking about the surgical tape?
And yes. So yeah, we're gonna mask.
Well, I want to loan her something then for the next show. She can borrow this Rode HS2 that was gifted to me. So stop by and I'll loan you this for the next shoot.
Well, the fun part of that is it's very likely going to be with Hasmuk's wife from South Africa.
Awesome.
Oh, awesome.
So things are in the work, but we're focusing on the Today Show right now. So we got November 3rd, then it will be live on the 6th. We record on the 3rd, and
it's the global cross-pollination of office hours. This has been one of the most cool aspects of being here and doing this. Last question of the day comes from Hasmuk in Cape Town. Pile and equivalent mics not readily available in South Africa. Looking at a Samson double over-the-ear DE10X mic. Thoughts? I can't imagine it wouldn't be equivalent to the Piles, which are in the lowest end of the production cost spectrum, but I've never used one. Does anybody have any experience with that particular brand? No? That's too bad. But, Hasmuk, I'd give it a shot. I mean, there's not a lot of of unknown technology in these very inexpensive headset microphones, and so I'm not sure there's going to be a gigantic difference between them.
Yeah. I used previously, before my DPAs, I used the Samsung SE10T, and that was fairly good, but it was only in one ear. So this model has over the ear 2 ears. And just to sky additional thing in terms of the Sidekick in-ear monitors, Mickey also helped me to route a second mic into that same in-ear monitor, so I can send instructions to the talent during the cooking class.
Well, to that point also,
talk back then.
I connected with Tucker yesterday, and he has a whole Unity comms concept that is awesome. If we could ever get him on for a second hour, it's awesome.
We're using it right now, Hasmuck, and it's super affordable. And the best thing about it is you get Tucker, and
true.
He's in the background the entire show. And then yesterday we just did a training on comms, and it works out great. And I use my mobile phone for comms. Some people run the app on the desktop, and then I run my earpods underneath my cans for intercom, and it's working real well.
Hey, Hasmuck, what are you plugging into? Because I have an extra pile double overhead ear thing, and it even comes with an XLR adapter. So I'd be happy. Ping me in Discord or offline or something like that. And if you want me to send this to you, I don't know if I can get it to you fast enough for your thing, but I'd be happy to do that. I'm not using that, and I can't see any reason why I would for a period of time. Okay, so hopefully we can do what the office hours tradition and help each other solve problems. Whoops, there is one more thing. Frank Haney came in with a last minute final question. Let's get it over here into this. Mark that is answered. Mark this one is answered. And last one before we close up shop. Has anyone updated to the new ATEM software? ATEM Switchers 8.5.1 update. This software update improves the input and monitor compatibility for all ATEM Mini modules, as well as adding adjustable brightness. We talked about this at the beginning of the show, and I think some people had, it just came out this morning, so I think some people had run the update, but also adds support for retaining still images in the media pool. I know when I restore my ATEM Mini first generation, it restores my media pool already. Now, I don't know if it does the entire media pool, but it restores my, oops, I didn't do it this morning, my standby screen. So I think we talked about that. No, has anybody played with it while we've been on the air and have any opinions beyond seeing it this morning in the wild for the first time? Courtney?
No, I haven't, because I'd have to take my picture down off the air. There's that problem, because it does go offline for about 2 or 3 minutes to download the new firmware.
Well, I'm very curious about it because I run ATEM both on a Mac and on a Windows system at the church, so I'm curious.
I imagine when we come back tomorrow,
you don't want to upgrade mid project, but that's why
I imagine this will be a discussion point tomorrow as people, shake the tires and generally try to figure out how it's all working overnight tonight. So I guess that takes us to the end of the show. Thank you all.
Frank needs to go test it for us, and so he needs to be the first one to see if the ice is solid.
There you go. Okay. Brings us to the end of the day. Thank you all. I want to thank everybody who's stuck around watching. We have almost 100 people still in the stream. We appreciate your showing up. We will be back here again tomorrow, starting at 6 a.m. or very close to that. And take care. Be good to each other, and we'll see you in the morning.
I can hear the music. I can still hear the music.
Yeah, we don't have it. That's sad. I'm going to have to get that file from
Remember,
Mickey.
people out there, update your Zoom.
Yeah.
So a new update out today.
I think, who is it, Stuart? Oh, he's playing something different. Is that Guy Lombardo?
I shall take over and end on the beat somewhere after Courtney lets us know what music's playing.
I don't think this is the way everything was planned.
All right.
Well, whoever's got host,
hit
the kill button. I don't. Do I? I just have
time to say goodbye, Bill.
I'm just saying.
Goodbye,
leave
Bill.
me